Hey Tooth Engineers, I'm Aryana and today we're here with Eman, Bioman. Eman, would you like to start off by kind of introducing yourself? I'm sure Tooth Engineers have heard, but...
Yeah, I am the infamous Bioman. You've probably seen me in several podcast episodes, and I'm ready to have a very fruitful discussion with you, Aryana. What's going on?
Yeah. To start, can you kind of explain how you came to the field of bioengineering and specifically regenerative dentistry?
Wow, that's a loaded question from sort of the path that I took to get to this point, but I will say it was not intentional to start. I sort of was in my exploratory phase in life 12 years ago, trying to figure out what I wanted to do as an aspiring medical student back when I was at the George Washington University. And at that time, it was really important to gain research experience. And before finding the lab that sort of led me to my 12 plus year career, I wanted to find some opportunity to learn more about practical clinical research in the field of medicine at that time. Lo and behold, me not really knowing anything about clinical research and what was going out there, I stumbled onto a lab that was working on regenerative medicine and 3D printing, which back then, I didn't know what cells were. I've never saw a 3D printer in my life, and I barely, got through high school biology and chemistry. So as soon as I got the exposure of 3D printing and regenerative medicine in a lab, I was just like, as opposed to doing too much exploration, let's just see how deep in this rabbit hole I can go in this tissue engineering research lab that I was in. And one thing really led to another. I had an amazing mentor who showed up on a previous episode that sort of inspired me to take sort of the entrepreneurial route in research. And one thing led to another where I started reading more in the field out of sort of like self-choice. And I sort of, had that conversation with my parents telling them, well, guys, I don't want to go into medical school anymore. I think I want to be an engineer doing tissue engineering research. And that then led me to the career and, business that we have here today.
How do you think your experience working with startups is different, and how do you think that kind of fulfills your entrepreneurial interests inside?
Funny enough, the way I think about the lab experience I've gained when I started this field of tissue engineering research, I almost think of those experiences as mini startups that were protected in an academic environment without any pay or obligation to it. So I will admit that this research career and path that I took was not rewarding in the short term. I was doing this research mostly out of volunteer and pretty much like a little bit above minimum wage salary. But because I loved what I was doing so much and I saw sort of the end goal of being like that one person that's able to work in this field and understand it, that's what really kept me going. And in each lab that I was in, I wasn't really micromanaged by any of my advisors because all of us were sort of aligned in this mission of trying to figure it out. And by it means like the next research project. And I was fortunate enough that all the labs that I did work in, due to their highly translational nature, required those labs in order for them to succeed to work across many different disciplines. So in that process, there's a lot of humility involved in it because I, as an individual, know how to print. But if I want to say solve the problems of organ regeneration, printing alone isn't going to solve that problem. And so what really inspired me to like answer these big questions in these labs I was in was the fact that I gained exposure from so many different other teams or research labs back in. That of itself, when I saw the byproduct of all of these different disciplines working together, ending up building that final product and having me be a part of that, that's what really made the field special to me.
I see. What is one piece of advice you'd give to someone like me who's interested in regenerative dentistry, bioengineering?
Stay humble, stay hungry. Do not expect immediate gratification in this field. Right now in the stage of this business that we're in, we are still exploring and we're still figuring out all avenues to spread awareness of this technology in a realistic manner, and doing so in a way that is conscious and non-sensationalized. And I think this is especially critical for people like us in this venture that are doing types of research that can easily be sensationalized. I printed the world's first heart that can go on a human. We're going to regenerate teeth and become this new standard of care of dentistry. While that is the goal, to get there will require us to have the humility to recognize that it's not going to just be our product alone that creates this new standard of care. We are just one component of the larger picture. And I think in order for this field to succeed in the next generation of biological products, I hope and I really anticipate there not being a monopoly in this industry. Now, yes, all of us are in this industry are in different startups, academic labs, big pharma companies. Everyone more or less has overlapping, ways of thinking to get to this end goal of regeneration. But as opposed to us thinking in silos to succeed, we have to really think about what every startup and what every industry towards this aligned goal have in common to get us to that end, which is regeneration. So really the advice I give is realizing that we're not alone, staying hungry, staying curious, knowing what you're really good at, and using that skill that you're really good at to contribute to this end goal. Not thinking that your singular expertise is the sole solution to this end.
One last question. What do you think was one of the biggest challenges you faced throughout your path?
I mean, I have so many, and I still do, honestly. I think it just goes back to this idea of I think there had a lot of ego deaths, I would call it, going through this process of researching, rejection in research, having high expectations in the beginning of this field, realizing that, when those high expectations aren't achieved, there's still a path for us to feel fulfilled. But to get to that realization, it made me realize what this field is really about, as opposed to what this field is perceived as. So for me, the challenge was from day one, I thought, oh yeah, I'm in this tissue engineering lab. I'm going to be the first person to print a whole human being or whatever. I mean, I didn't think to that extent, but there was certainly this hyperbole that was surrounded in this field that got me enticed to start it. And then when I chose to invest the time to stay in this field, I realized while that dream can still be there, just because we don't necessarily achieve the sensationalized vision of tissue engineering research, it doesn't mean the stuff that we do in this field can't bring new standard of care, a better quality of life to people. So sort of the kind of perspective that I had changed, and that required a lot of humility in the journey I took, where a lot of people know this field. I mean, in a relative percentage of people in the world, tissue engineering is still relatively nascent, but there's millions of universities, millions of companies, not millions, but there's plenty of people in this world that have exposure and strive to achieve in this space. And I don't think there's going to just be one lab, one group, one individual that's going to have the solution to everything. I don't think, we're going to become, this field should be monopolized like in software or AI, which are now even becoming saturated as well. For this field, I believe, to succeed, I think it's really going to require conglomerates of startups and industries that each present unique facets of knowledge to achieve these solutions. And what I love so much about tissue and our tooth engineers platform and our venture is the fact that we are all striving towards this nascent direction of not just regenerating all organs, but we're regenerating teeth. We know teeth, we know regeneration, and we know this subfield. And through our time building this venture, we're going to be able to build an expertise and a portfolio that can contribute to the mission of regeneration, not be the sole people that monopolize the industry in the world.
You say that this field shouldn't become overconcentrated. I agree. Do you see that possibly happening?
I think it depends on the lessons that are learned in other industries. Relative to all the other deep tech fields that exist in this space, I think us as tissue engineers should take note as to the consequences that happen with deep techs that become monopolized by several big agglomerates. Of course, there are trade-offs. We can get into a political, capitalistic discussion, which I'm not against capitalism. I think, capitalism allows for some incentive to get towards an end. But when it becomes overly monopolized and concentrated, where one industry and one perspective dominates a market, not that that incentive shouldn't exist, but achieving the end of that incentive leads a cap to innovation. And hopefully in our young sector that still hasn't found that singular monopolized industry, we can learn the consequences of a single corporation or group monopolizing the field to seizing innovation in that space. Mm-hmm. And I don't have the solution to that because, everyone wants money, everyone wants power, everyone wants, their technology to win. And I think there's a lot of merit to that, and that spurs innovation. But I sort of want to ask our industry, even our startup, as we, build this mission of doing tissue engineering consciously and right, what we do when that success is achieved. I do know this field will become successful. I mean, it's been about 30 years and we're seeing amazing things in the clinic now with technologies that we have. But what I ask, especially with our ventures and ventures that are a little more advanced stage from us, what do we do once we become successful? And that's going to be a really critical question once products like ours and other regenerative technologies go to market.
Well, thank you, Eman, for talking with me today. And thank you to the engineers for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Yeah.
We'll see you all next time.